Hi guys, very welcome to Mentour, yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. As you can see from my attire, I am on vacation, which means that today's video is going to be about how to travel as an airline pilot. And I don't mean travel in uniform, I mean just going out traveling with the family. You'll get to know, for example, things about security control, what about food, travel documentation, and do I prefer to sit in the back of the aircraft or in the front? Stay tuned. Right guys, so the trip really starts well and long before that you're actually going traveling, okay? It needs to be properly prepared. Just like when you go flying, how successful the outcome is going to be with your travel, just as with your flight, is going to depend on how well you have prepared for it. There are a couple of things that you need to have a check on, okay? If you're a member of the European Union, you should get yourself a European health card, all right? That will enable you to access healthcare anywhere within the European Union without having problems with paperwork and so on. Now, if you are traveling internationally, you are going to have to check with your insurance company to make sure that you have a travel insurance or at least a medical healthcare insurance so that you're covered if something would happen to you if you go, for example, to the United States from Europe. Otherwise, that can become very costly very quickly. Another thing, guys, that a lot of people don't realize but is extremely important to remember is to check the validity of your passports, okay? So you'll be surprised on how many people actually get caught at the airport with passports that are not in date or are just about to expire. Now, you don't want that to happen to you. It's a very, very sad end to a promising vacation, all right? So one thing that you have to realize is that the passport has to be valid for the trip you're going to do, but in some cases you might actually need another 6 months of validity in order to be accepted into the country. So that's the case with quite a lot of countries around the globe. So make sure that you have checked your passports for the entire family, that everyone is in date, and that you have a margin of about 6 months at least before you go traveling. If you're not sure, you can always check with the consulates in the country that you're going to. There's loads of websites that will tell you what kind of passport requirements are there. But check that. Make sure you have medical insurance, make sure you have your health card and your passports in date, okay? Right guys, next thing to think about, and this is really important, is to take a lot of time. You know, make sure whatever time you think it will take to get yourself to the airport with your family, take another hour on top of that, because if you're there early, well, you'll be able to just have a nice kind of, Swedish fika with your family and chill and relax. But if something happens to you on the road, if you get delayed, if there's traffic, whatever, you're not going to have that stress building up, which we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, okay? Right guys, so me and my family has just managed to get through security control, which is always a bit of an adventure. I wanted to mention that as well. Make sure that you have plenty of time to get through security control. In different countries, the procedures might be different and it might take a lot of time to get through the control. So, count on that to make sure that you're not getting there under stress, being annoyed with security personnel. Realize that they are there for our safety. They're doing their job, and everything that they ask you to do is something we should just do with a smile on our face. Make sure that you have taken your liquids out, that you're not carrying anything that is above 100 milliliters, that you've taken all of your metals things out of your pockets and stuff like that, because the security procedures are there for the safety of you and everyone traveling around you. So just realize that, just like with the security protocols that we have in the aircraft, the same goes for the ones doing the security controls when you're being screened and going into the airport. Right, another thing that we always do, me and my family, when we go out traveling, is we bring some of our own food with us, all right? Obviously, you can't bring any liquids through security control, but you can bring your own sandwiches, your own salads and things like that. And it's a great way of saving a little bit of money when you're out traveling, but it's also a bit nicer, you can choose whatever food you want yourself and bring it with you. And another thing that is quite important to remember is that depending on which airline you're traveling with, in some cases they might run out of the food that they have catered in the morning flight, which means that when you are traveling, if it's on an evening flight, for example, or it's the third rotation or fourth rotation of the day, you might not be able to buy any food on board, even though you want to. So I always carry a couple of sandwiches or something with me, a little bit of fruit, so that at least I have something to eat if they would run out on board. Right guys, another thing that always strikes me as a little bit weird when I'm out traveling by myself is how long people can elect to stand in queue for. In most flights nowadays you will have assigned seats. Okay, and when you have an assigned seat, it means that no one will take your seat, which means that there's no point really to stand in the queue for half an hour before the gate opens and another 40 minutes before the gate closes. Right, so that is just another little tip from the coach. If you do have an assigned seat, feel free to just sit down, relax, and join the queue when it's time for you to board, because it's just going to make your travel much more relaxing. Right, another question that I get frequently asked is whether or not I prefer to sit in the cockpit of the aircraft or in the back as a passenger when I'm traveling, and whether or not I feel safe when I am as a passenger sitting back in the cabin and I don't have control of everything, which I'm used to. And this is actually a very good question, and the answer to that is yes, I always feel safe and secure. When I'm traveling with airlines that are allowed in, for example, European airspace, I know that the crews flying those aircraft and the airlines operating those flights have been subjected to exactly the same kind of safety standards that I am myself. The crews have been certified, they have been checked in the same manner by the same rules as everyone else, which means that I can be completely confident, and you can be completely confident, that the crews and the airlines are doing exactly what they can in order to keep the flights as safe as humanly possible. So I have no problems whatsoever to lean back, relax, read a book, listen to a podcast or anything like that when I am traveling as a passenger. Whether or not I prefer to sit in the front, as in the cockpit, or sitting in the back, that depends a little bit, because it's two completely different things. When I'm traveling in the back as a passenger, I like to sit back, relax, have a cup of coffee, listen to my podcast, not do much, just chill out, maybe take a sleep, something like that. But the time tends to creep by quite slowly, because it is kind of boring, especially if you do it often. If you have a 3-hour flight like the one I'm about to board behind me now, I know that I'm going to be quite bored towards the end of that flight. Okay, that doesn't really happen when you're sitting in the front. Because remember, the first half hour of a flight is going to be dedicated to the departure, the climb. It's a quite intense part of the flight, which means that you will definitely not be bored during that part. And then you will, in cruise, planning our en route, listening to weather, doing paperwork, things like that, but keeps you kind of busy as well, even though you can get maybe slightly bored if it's a really long flight. Last hour of the flight would be you preparing for the descent and approach, you briefing for the descent and approach, and then executing the descent and approach. And that really feels like it's just flying by, pardon the pun. So that part, when you're flying as a pilot, even if you have a 4-hour flight, you will not feel like you're getting that bored, okay? It's going to feel much, much quicker than if you're sitting in the back. And that part I do prefer to sit in the cockpit, because, when you do as much flying as I do, you really, in most cases, just want to get to your destination and go about doing what you were planning to do. So, I hope that answers some of your questions. I always feel safe, and I have complete trust and confidence in my colleague, whatever airline it is they're traveling with. And yeah, it goes quicker, and it's a little bit more fun to sit in the front than it is in the back. Right guys, I hope you really liked that one. There are much more coming up on the channel. I do have some surprises coming up that I really think you're gonna like. In order to get all the most recent news and to be able to chat with me personally, make sure that you get the Mentour Aviation app and join up by registering and going into the chat. That's where I hang out. You can ask me questions, you can push notifications to me if you have any specific questions, and you'll get to know when I do things like live streams. You can ask questions of the live streams and stuff using the app. It's completely free, so I recommend all of you who are out there to get it. And there might be some job related stuff coming up there as well. So if you have a license and you are in the business of searching for your first airline job, it might be a good idea to keep your eyes on the app as well. As always, I hope you're doing fantastic wherever you are. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.